Welcome to the CT Educator podcast. I am your host, Karina Hogan. I am a registered CT technologist with 20 years of experience and knowledge. I help new CT technologists level up their CT training so that you can become a successful technologist. I'm also a mom and committed to sharing my knowledge and expertise to help you build your confidence, know the CT basics so that you can deliver quality patient care. So let's get into it. Hello, welcome back, technologists. Welcome back. So I decided to do a second episode for this week because you know what? My brain is working overtime and I just want to provide some good content for you guys. So I am doing another recording here because I am teaching a live workshop here in a couple weeks. So September 25th. So make sure that you guys sign up for my live workshop. We're going to be talking all about IV access and how to be confident as fuck as a CT tech and to shine in your IV skills. Okay. We're going to talk about all IVs, what you can and can't use. And I'm going to have some demonstrations as far as IV accesses, like real ones that you can and can't use in CT. So make sure you guys sign up for the live workshop. It's 60 minutes. You're going to come into the Zoom room with me and I'm going to teach you all about IVs. I'm going to give you all my knowledge on that. Okay. So make sure you guys sign up for that. Okay. If you listen to Tuesday's episode, I had discussed on the tragic passing of my friend Sean Hudson and the incredible interview I did with him as far as fatherhood, because him and I are both special needs parents. And it was an awesome episode that I re-aired per the request of his family and in honor of him. So if you're interested in listening to my other podcast, I have a link in the show notes at the Rare Mama podcast. It's really good. I talk all the parenthood things and all the journey and divorce and, you know, how my life has been after divorce and all the dating and relationships when it comes in that container. So it's a really good podcast, so make sure you guys check it out. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about 3 most common mistakes that I see CT technologists make and how they can be avoided. Now, this is a big one, and it's going to be a very touchy subject, so make sure you guys hang on here, okay? So, as we grow in our career and as we become more successful and we become more experienced, we do encounter mistakes and things that can be avoided in our CT training and education. Sometimes we do it as beginners, sometimes we do it when we're seasoned, and sometimes it's a little bit of both, right? So 3 things that I see that are common mistakes that I see on a daily basis when I'm working or I'm training or I'm educating anybody are as follows. So follow me here, guys, okay? Patient centering. I know you guys are sick and tired of hearing me talk about patient centering and ISO center, but it is a most common mistake because I see so many people, even seasoned techs, that do not center properly. Okay. And then we get the physicist who gets on us about doses and why doses are high, the doses are off, and, you know, constantly yelling at us about dose, always about dose, right? So the common mistakes that I see is a lot of techs guess because they were never shown the proper way. They're not using the laser light correctly, and they were never taught how to position the patients correctly. Okay. Now, your laser light, you know, you have crosshairs. You have to make sure that you center your patients in the middle of the table and make sure that you center them at the Z axis of the patient. So right at the, you know, in the middle. Okay. Those are very important because when you take your scouts, it calculates the dose correctly and making sure that it administers the correct radiation dose to the patient so that you get an optimal exam. So any tech that tells me, oh, well, I wasn't shown correctly. Oh, they just said here, bullshit. Okay. You can do it properly. So show them the proper way, guys, because I do all the time. Now, the second thing is, and this is a big one, the last 2 are the biggest ones, is checking your IV access. So what I mean is that you're not flushing that IV to make sure that it's good for a power injection. Okay. not checking your IV site if you can, making sure that contrast is going in and not infiltrating in the patient. So what I mean is let's say it's a routine study where you have a 65-second delay on an abdomen and pelvis. If you're in the room with your hand on that IV, making sure that that IV is not infiltrating into the patient's skin. Because I see a lot of people who do not do that. I do that because I've seen a lot of really bad infiltrations on other patients, not me particularly. I mean, yeah, IVs do infiltrate, during arterial studies because you can be in there checking, right? Unfortunately, we can't. But on those routine studies that you have a long delay, you can be in the room, making sure that the patient's comfortable, making sure the IV is flowing good, make sure contrast is going good, so you can get an optimal scan. I can tell you, in the years I have been a technologist, I have seen techs that do not flush IVs, that have infiltrated IVs so many times and are not checking to make sure that contrast is flowing. And then you get a big infiltration on the patient. That is very important because those things can be very fatal to the patient. And I mean, there have been cases that I've seen when I was a beginner technologist where a tech would constantly infiltrate patients' IVs because that tech was not checking that IV properly, and a patient lost their arm. So it is very crucial to make sure you check your IV access. And if it's not good and you're not comfortable, it needs to be replaced. Tell the nurse, hey, we need a new IV. This is not working. If they challenge you on that, say you're not comfortable injecting contrast because contrast can be very fatal to the patient. And especially they could lose a limb. Okay. Now, the third and final one, and this one is huge, is priming that power injector. So when you hook up the tubing, making sure you're expelling all that air into the tubing, you're bleeding it out. So you see a little bit of saline coming out of that tubing to make sure there is zero air in that tubing. Okay. Because what can happen is you can have air embolus. Patient gets an air embolus and it can be very fatal, and patients have expired from that. Okay. At a couple facilities I worked at, that has happened where the tech was not paying attention and one patient got an air embolus and lived. The other one, the patient died. So you have to be mindful of that because we are the last check before we hook up that patient and start injecting contrast. So that is very, very important, and it's very critical that you make sure that you're doing that. Take a couple extra minutes. I know our department is busier than whatever, but those extra minutes can save a life in making sure that you do things properly. Okay. So those are kind of the three mistakes that I see. I'd be curious to know what you would see in your departments. So you can always email me those. I love stories. I love to tell stories. That's why I have a podcast. Okay. So those are kind of some of the common mistakes that I see. And you know what? As a technologist, you know what? We all make mistakes. Okay. It's important to learn to correct the mistake the first time so it doesn't happen again. Okay. We've all injected the wrong patient. Okay. We've scanned the wrong patient because we're human. Okay. So nobody can say, oh, well, I've never done that. I know it. Almost all the technologists I've worked with in the 21 years I've been a technologist, they've all made a simple mistake. Okay. And it's just important to acknowledge it, correct it, and make sure you prevent patient harm. So I hope these 3 tips were very, very important. As always, you can always send me your questions. Email me at contact@thecteducator.com. Follow on Instagram at the CT Educator. If you want to come on the podcast, there is a form, a link in the show notes. So fill it out, come on the podcast, and let's have a conversation. Let's have some fun. So, and I will also link that episode in my other podcasts in the show notes. So you can check out the guest episode I did with my guest, Sean Hudson, very good friend of mine. Really miss that guy. So yes. So make sure you check that out and sign up for the live workshop, guys. Okay. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. So make sure you sign up for that. So as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email, send me a DM on Instagram. I'm available on both. Okay. So hope you guys have an amazing week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you would like to share your CT experience, have an interesting story to share, or need help in your CT training, please email me your questions at contact@thecteducator.com. Follow along on Instagram at the CT Educator, also on Facebook at the CT Educator. Don't forget to like, share, leave a 5-star review, as this will help support the show and it'll reach all of you that need guidance. Thank you for listening and happy scanning.